The Stanford prison experiment is one of the most famous in social psychology. A decade after the fact, Philip Zimbardo was quite explicit in his suggested intent of this experiment. Funded by a grant from the military, the SPE examined interpersonal dynamics between role-playing guards and prisoners in a laboratory hall which had been converted into a simulated prison. The 22 to 24 subjects were college-age males, were all white, with the exception of one Asian student. They were all strangers to each other. Half of the group were assigned as guards and the other half as prisoners, randomly selected via coin toss. Extensive video and audio recordings were made, anecdotal reporting and notes were kept, several tests and surveys were conducted. In all, the data collected was quite comprehensive and expansive. Apart from the fact that this study would surely violate modern IRB standards for research, the method section is almost a model of Smagorinsky's suggestion for what a method section should be. Of the some 50-page write-up, approximately half of it is dedicated to the methods. The proposed 2-week experiment had to be cut off in 6 days, and the infamous methods of the SPE have become the focus of considerable attention for the nearly 50 years since. But that's not all I'm here to talk about. Even a brief summary of the SPE methods would take easily just an hour in itself. As I mentioned, the SPE has become both famous and infamous in the past 50 years, and the subject of much scholarship itself. Letexier's write-up is almost a model for what Smagorinsky would suggest a method section should not be. 2 simple paragraphs out of a 20-page paper, which amounts to little more than, I looked at a bunch of stuff, and here is what I found. Ironically, the extensive methods provided by Zimbardo is exactly what enabled an effective historical analysis and critique of the SPE. Letexier uncovered striking contradictions between extensive data collected and not just the SPE write-up itself, but its historical presentation over the past 50 years. Letexier demonstrates significant numbers of seeming contradictions between Zimbardo's published accounts of the SPE and what the historical documentation which he examined itself shows. It is a compelling case that the SPE is worthy of revisiting. Just as Zimbardo gave the game away behind what his true intent was in conducting his experiment, Letexier so too gives away his intent. In different ways and for different reasons, both Zimbardo and Letexier are doing research as praxis, but neither seem willing to follow Sullivan and Porter's guidance towards explicating their own biases in order to properly contextualize the research. Letexier's research adds another layer of content to the SPE, and while this research may indeed change both Zimbardo's explicit and implicit intents, the value of both Zimbardo's and Letexier's research remains, if not altered with further context and reflection. The SPE was a quasi-experimental design, which was comprised of running essentially 2 parallel case studies of prisoners and guards, and the interactions which developed among and between these 2 oppositional groups. Essentially the very thing that I am looking at in an examination of the epistemological crisis. Letexier provides the value of revisiting and conducting an historical analysis and research, not to reinvent it, but to look anew at that research and see if there is something more there that hadn't previously been examined. A new paradigm, so to speak.